Joseph Williams joins us now. He's the former senior editor at U.S. News and World Report. Joseph, talk to us about this federal holiday, as Jim pointed out, signed into law in June of 2021 by President Biden as a federal holiday. I know it was a state holiday in Texas as far back as the 1980s, so it was obviously a struggle to get to this point. Can you talk to us about this journey and the sense of importance of him signing that document?
Journey is the proper word for it, struggle, however you want to call it, but it was an uphill battle for most of the last century to try to get somebody to recognize, get the federal government to recognize that this was an important holiday for African Americans. Now, if you step back and take a look at the holiday itself, it's actually the end of slavery, but the beginning of something else. While a lot of people celebrate it as Black Liberation Day, liberation only came almost 3 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was formally signed by Abraham Lincoln. And there were a lot of slave owners, people who owned these chattel slaves, who tried to resist, and that's one of the reasons why it took so long for the news to get from Abraham Lincoln's desk to the fields, the cotton fields of Texas. So in order to talk about this in context, you have to understand that the liberation struggle kind of continues, and that Juneteenth may have been an important day for African Americans, and it was hailed by people who got President Joe Biden to sign it, that this was a landmark decision, but it wasn't always that way, and it represents something a whole lot deeper than just a day off of work.
Yeah, you mentioned the word struggle, and I'd like to maybe dig a little bit deeper into that. You know, as we look at Juneteenth this year, the current environment. You have this ongoing political rhetoric about some people who don't want to have this reckoning about race in the United States. Beyond that, even efforts in some states to limit what's taught about America's racial history. Can you talk to us, kind of frame the holiday in that context?
Well, one of the reasons why it became an official holiday was in the wake of the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis in 2020. That got a lot of the nation thinking about racial reckoning, got a lot of people thinking about inequality and about the distance that Black people have traveled in this country, but still are not quite as equal as people think that they are. There's still a lot of bias out there. There's still a lot of attempts to bury Black history. There are still police officers who are shooting unarmed Black men. So in that context, it's a bittersweet moment for Black America. The sweet in that it was recognized that an important part of American history, not just Black history, was recognized by the federal government and was granted federal holiday status. But the bitter part is still very much ongoing. And even though we had a Black president in the last 10 years, we have seen the rise of white supremacy in America, the rise of open white supremacy. We've seen two major presidential candidates who have been open about their disdain for Black history and their disdain for equality and the so-called racial reckoning. And we have an entire political party that is not really wanted to try to engage in that and try to wrestle it to the ground and make it a non-thing. As a matter of fact, it's part of the identity of the far right, and the far right has become mainstream on the political right in this country.
Joseph, holidays here in this country, as you know, a lot of them end up being nothing more than picnics, barbecues, parades. How should we celebrate Juneteenth?
Well, it's an important thing to celebrate it, each to his or her own. I mean, basically, the way we celebrate holidays in America is quite individual. But a lot of people are recommending that this is a day of reflection, a day to kind of put into context the Black American liberation struggle in America and the fact that it's still kind of incomplete. Reading books about history, understanding that this holiday was not just something out of thin air, that it very much has history and legacy behind it. So those are a few of the suggestions that people have been recommending, and just try to understand where this holiday came from.
Joseph, thanks for the suggestions and your insights. Appreciate it.